welcome everyone. Today is part 2 of the February 2025 African Violet video. We will take a look at a couple of shelves that I haven't shown in part 1. Here on far back is a baby of Cajun's Fascinating Fury starting to bloom. It was grown from a leaf that broke off when I received the main plant last year, and I think it's showing some faint pink fantasy already. And later on the second shelf, I will show you the mother plant beginning the second blooming cycle. Here is Scales. It's a semi-miniature with crown variegation by a Ukrainian hybridizer, and I'm gonna say her name in Ukrainian language, Olena Lebetska, also known as Yelena Lebetskaya. This is a semi-miniature, one of my favorite Wesley's Depth of Reason. It has beautiful light lavender blue bell-shaped blooms with some green pigment in the petals and variegated foliage. Next is Happy Harold, growing in the new potting mix, and it seems to be really loving it. It grows very well in this potting mix. And there is a brother, a sibling plant of the same variety, also growing very nicely in the new potting mix and soon will be blooming. Here is a semi-miniature by Ralph Robinson, Rob's Slap Happy, one of my favorite Robs. Then we have another plant of Funambule, and I did make a video about it sporting, so this one looks like it's undecided. It has some faint fantasy, but not nearly as much fantasy as this true blooming variety has. Next is a Streptocarpus. It's a relative of African violets called VaT-Mandarinka. I showed a young plant in the last episode, and this is another plant, a mature plant of VaT-Mandarinka by Tatiana Valkova, and it is known to be blooming in different colors. So it has some fuchsia pink pigment in the younger blooms and then orange pigment in the mature blooms. Here we have a young plant of Hunter's Whitetail Fawn and another Hunter's Bedroom Eyes. And I think Hunter's Bedroom Eyes true blooming plant should have, true blooming hybrid, should have more white in the blooms. So I'm wondering if what I have is a sport. I grew it from a leaf that I received as a freebie with my eBay purchase. Very beautiful foliage on this one, variegated. Here is a semi-miniature by Svetlana Repkina called RS-Notki. It translates into English as musical notes. Beautiful pink bells with pointed dark green foliage. Here we have N-Charoit, a Russian semi-miniature hybrid by Nadezhda Bertnikova. This one should have some fantasy as shown here on this lower petal, but then it looks like some of the blooms are blooming solid colors, so I'll watch it to see if maybe this one particular one is a sport. Then we have two bell-shaped varieties by Nadezhda Bertnikova, the same hybridizer, and they are related. This is an Avatar with blue bell-shaped blooms, crown variegated variety, and then it's registered sport by the same hybridizer called N-Neytiri. This one has very faint blue color in the blooms, mostly white blooms, also crown variegated, and I believe both of them are semi-miniatures. Far back is Snuggles Little Girl, blooming her heart out. variegated girl foliage. Jolly Andrea, that also fell. We had an adventure with this vintage stand, so I had to kind of revive it, bring it back to life, and now I think it's going to bloom very soon. Then another sport of Funambule. This one is definitely a sport, solid dark blue. Here is another rose bouquet growing in the new potting mix. Also looks very well. Will be blooming soon. Beautiful mosaic variegation, one of my favorite mosaic variegated hybrids. And here is a beautiful plant that I wanted to show, even though it's not blooming. This is a very young plant of a vintage champion variety called Cabbage Patch. And finally, I'll show you a blooming shelf on one of the stands here. These are my newest Barina Light plant stands that I showed in All My Lights video last year, shortly before the plumbing adventure happened here in the freeze last winter. It only took 10 months to have it repaired. Yes, in Oregon, construction companies and home rebuild companies are a hot commodity. It's not easy and it takes some time. But yes, the wall now is fully done and my plants are back. And here, before I show you the plants, I'll show you the improvement that I came up with and I wanted to share with you. So if you remember these lights, they came with little pads, sticky pads, that this one I think is one of them, that didn't really hold the lights to the glass shelves. So I came up with this solution, double-sided tape. It's a heavy-duty tape and it holds the lights very well up to the glass surface of the shelves. So I hope it works in the long term, because what happened with those little sticky pads, the lights get warm as they continue working, and the pads, they were not strong enough. They would get unglued or detached from the glass surface. So I hope this heavy-duty double-sided sticky tape will work better. If you remember last time I came up with a solution that didn't look visually appealing. It was zip ties, and so whole shelves were covered in zip ties, and that didn't look too good. So I hope this looks better this time. So here is the shelf that I wanted to show you. These are the plants that some of them are growing in the new potting mix, and some of them are blooming and others are just about to bloom. This is LE-Rimma. I showed you a smaller plant in the last episode. It was growing in the old potting mix, simplified potting mix of peat moss and perlite, 50-50, and this one grows in the new potting mix, and of course the size is much larger. So let me bring the other plant so you can compare. Okay, I brought the smaller plant from the other room. You saw it in the previous episode. It has been blooming really nicely, but in terms of how strong and vigorous it looks, of course this plant growing in the new potting mix with the slow release fertilizer looks much stronger than this plant. And of course I'll have to repot this plant as soon as possible for it to keep on growing, because as you can see, the central leaves and the crown are already growing smaller than they should if you compare it to this plant. This one will be blooming very soon. Here we see a flower bud forming right there. Here is another baby of Funambule. This one, luckily for me, is blooming true. It has much stronger fantasy than its siblings. Then here we have Blue Dragon, one of my favorite hybrids, and it has gorgeous blooms. This one is also growing in the new potting mix. Then here we have Cajun's Fascinating Fury, the mother plant, beginning the second blooming cycle. It keeps on growing new leaves. The blooms, there's something going on with the pigment that it kind of gets faded. This is not powdery mildew. It just happens sometimes when the plant grows in a cooler environment, and this one was growing on the bottom shelf right there, and I just took it and moved it to this shelf to give it a little warmer growing temperature. But here we can see some of the petals already show much stronger fantasy than in the first blooming cycle. Cajun's Fascinating Fury by Belinda Thibodeau, and the foliage is to die for, and in my eyes it's really beautiful variegation and beautiful symmetry on this hybrid. Here is Golden Eye. It's a miniature or a semi-miniature. I will include it in captions. Beautiful variegation, very young plant, and just the first bud is appearing. Streptocarpus DS-Black Magic by Pavlo Yanikeyev from Dnipro, Ukraine. Almost black, very, very dark purple velvety blooms on this Streptocarpus. Another Cajun's young plant growing in the new potting mix. One of my favorite Cajuns as well. Cajun's Flamboyant Mistress. Strong foliage on this one. And finally, one of my favorite Wranglers varieties that I rarely show. This one is growing really well in the new potting mix. Wrangler's Jealous Heart. I love it for the beautiful variegation on leaves, and it has very delicate, very, very faint light pink blooms that I hope I can show you in the future episodes.